Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live this evening. We're going to have a question and answer forum this evening. You're welcome to join us, each and every one of you. We'd like to hear from you. Give us your comments, your opinions, your questions. We're interested in all of them. It's a beautiful evening here in Northern Ontario. It's almost like summer. The temperature was up to 12 degrees Celsius today, which I don't even know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it'd be in the mid 60s anyway. Really a nice temperature. Hello from Highwayman 204. Hello, Highwayman. Thank you for joining us. Good to hear from you. But yes, it's a beautiful day. I've been setting aside some time every evening. Hi, bud, from William. Hello, how are you? Setting aside some time this evening, and every evening, to clean up the old Peterbilt, get it ready for a little spring tour. So looking forward to that. I haven't driven it since the fall of last year. Hey, Redneck Trucker, how are you doing? Looking forward to my first drive of the spring. The roads are dry. I should be able to keep the truck clean that way and go for a little tour. Jesse, I'm doing well, sir. How are you? The Mexicans, blessing to you all. Blessing to you, sir. Good to hear from you. How are you guys all doing tonight?
You can go ahead, you got 28 people.
So, give me some questions here this evening. It's a question and answer period. See if we can't solve a few of your questions. Hello, DC Lifestyle. Hello, how are you doing? Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff to talk about in the trucking industry. There always has been. There always will be. There are always lots of controversies going on and questions. I've had a little bit of time to think about this merger between Knight and Swift, and I'm not sure if Knight is a publicly traded company. I'm pretty sure Swift is, but essentially Swift, I'm sure Swift stock has gone up over this move because essentially they've inherited, I don't know how big Knight would be. Certainly not as big as Swift, I wouldn't think, but Knight, I'm sure, is at least half as big as Swift is anyway. So they've almost added 50% to their capacity. So there's an awful lot of trucks available to Swift. Hopefully they'll be able to capture more of that market share and drive the freight rate up a little by demanding more, because they've got no competition from Knight anymore. Hello everyone from Rusty Shackelford. How are you, Rusty? Thanks for joining us. So hopefully it'll mean an upswing for Swift in the rates, at least anyway, and hopefully that'll lead to more good things. But trucking is an ever-evolving industry. You never know what's around the corner next, what improvements they're going to make, what disastrous regulations and laws they're going to come up with. Michael, 50% more accidents. I like that. It may be true. That's funny. We'll have to see how it goes with that merger. Certainly, it's I'm sure it means good things for guys looking for work, jobs fairs and stuff like that in the Southwest. More driving positions available, I would think. I would imagine that when Swift took over Knight, that they managed to keep Knight's drivers, or the majority of them anyway, so they've certainly added to their workforce. It'll be an interesting situation. We'll have to see how it all turns out. Any questions out there tonight? Anything we can talk about that you're interested in, that you've been wondering about? Interested to hear your take on things. How's trucking going right now? I always kind of look forward to spring when I was trucking. What steps do you have to take to become an independent owner-operator? An independent? I assume that you mean by independent that you mean operating your own authority, and that's certainly what it is to me. You've got to apply for your authority. You've got to secure insurance for your vehicle, certainly. You've got to determine where you want to run, so you know where you need your operating authority to be active. And certainly you need to find a couple of your own customers. It's not really the same thing to be phoning load brokers and other trucking companies for freight, because that's a meager existence. You should at least get a couple of your own customers, even if they're only one directional and you've got to run off the load board to get home again. But certainly you should get a few of your own customers, because the freight rate's low enough without having to share 10% of that with a load broker or another trucking company. But I think that's the way to go these days. By all means, if you're in the States, secure your own operating authority and insurance, find a couple of customers and go for it. Here in Canada, not so much. The freight rates are so cheap, it's not even worth getting your own authority up here. But the US is a whole different ballgame. Who is going to buy and pay the monthly fees for required electronic? Yeah, I can't find anyone. That's a really good question. Who's going to pay for the electronic logging device when they're mandated? All sorts of the little guys can't afford these things, and I've heard the costs are starting to come down on those, but they started out at being about $2,000 a unit. Now I have heard that they're coming down in price, and I've heard rumors about subsidies from the states, the various states, if you apply to them, to help you obtain one of these devices, because they are going to be law. But certainly they should be able to help you with these things if they're mandating them, because not everybody can afford a $2,000 unit to stick in their truck to please somebody else. Do I like to drive automatic trucks? I have to be honest with you. I've never driven an automatic truck. So I don't know what that's like. I don't know if it's good or bad. I've heard that they can be cantankerous in the snow, for instance, or trying to dig themselves out of a mud hole or something like that. I've heard automatics aren't great, but honestly, I've never even driven one, and to be perfectly honest, I never really wanted to either. I'm quite happy with the old stick shifts. I find they work well for me.
Question for you from Rusty, when will trucker pay go back up?
When will trucker pay go back up, Rusty? It's already started to increase in certain niches, in certain like small areas if you're able to tap into them. Heavy haul is doing well right now. Tanker niches are doing okay. Produce is up and down, but flatbed work, the pay is starting to go up again a little. But the more competition, the lower the rates will be. So you get stuff like dry freight and van freight. There's so many of those guys like Swift and Knight that you'll never see. I don't expect you'll see driver pay go up hauling dry freight. Driver pay will increase and continues to increase in those niche markets that not everybody wants to do or that everybody can do, like tanker work or heavy haul. 13 versus 18, what do you say? It depends on your application. It depends on how much weight you're pulling. I like the 18 speed because it's so bloody versatile. No matter what situation you're in, you can select a gear to get you out of where you are or what you want to do. If you're spun out on a grade, on a 20% grade with an 80,000 pound truck trailer and load, you can find a gear to pick it up off the hill after you put your chains on. I like the 18 speed myself just because it gives you so many choices. You certainly don't use them all, but you have all sorts of choice for selection, and I like having that. And I've had this truck that I've had now since 2004 has an 18. I've had not one maintenance issue with it, not one. How do I take curves with confidence, and how long does it take to get the feel to be a complete trucker? Trucks generally are not designed to corner well. They don't corner well. Trucks track in a straight line, so you've always got to be careful in a curve. Coming into a curve, you don't know if that road is well banked or if it's poorly banked or if it's banked at all. The best thing to do coming into a corner is to slow down and take it easy. Feel your way through the corner. Be careful. You'll feel if it starts to lean outside, you'll feel it in the seat of your pants as the unit starts to lean, and that's bad. So slow down even more. You want to keep level through the corner. Trucks are not Indy cars, and you can't drive them like that, or you shouldn't drive them like that because they'll flip over. They're top heavy. You want to sit flat, take the corners slow, especially if you're off the interstates on secondary highways or roads. Just take it easy in the corners, and you'll get it. But every corner is different. But you'll get to know that you come into all corners carefully because you don't know the corner and how it's going to react, how it's going to treat the truck. If I own my own truck and trailer, am I leasing on to an authority? What's a fair percentage for them to charge me? You know, it used to be they'd take 8%, 10% is more common now. Anything over, and you know, that's 10%'s a fair bit. So you've got to be careful there. The freight rate's got to be worth it, that you can afford to lose 10% and still profit out of that. But anything more than 10%, I don't like that number at all because the margins are so slim anyway.
Got a comment from Charles. Let me hold the keys to that bad boy truck of yours.
Charles, it can be yours for 60,000. Come and get the keys.
I got another one from Orion. Do auto transmissions save fuel, and are they worth having?
Automatic transmissions are supposed to save fuel. That's one of the things they tout in buying an automatic transmission. But I know a couple of guys that have had automatics that have had mechanical trouble, and boy, those things are expensive to fix. I know one fella that he had two major repairs on his automatic transmission that the warranty didn't cover, and it just about broke that guy. So I'm not a fan of automatics, frankly.
Another one from Shay. What's your take on a new truck with transmission versus a glider kit? Shay.
Oh, Shay. That's an easy one for me. I'd take a glider kit all day long. I just think that's the way to go, because in a glider kit you can put a reliable engine in it that you're familiar with, as compared to a new truck. You don't know what you're getting. A new truck is so expensive, the payments are so high, and then you get downtime because of mechanical issues. Man, nobody can afford that. I'd go with a glider kit all day long with an engine that you're familiar with. In fact, if I were continuing to run over the road, I would do a glider kit myself.
Got another one?
Mm-hmm.
What state do you like to travel in the best?
What's my favorite state to travel in? That's a tough one for me. I've got a few favorites. I always really liked running Nebraska and Wyoming, for instance. I think they were probably my favorites, Nebraska and Wyoming, just because they had excellent truck stops, the highways were good, they were well kept. There wasn't a lot of traffic, which I really liked. I'd have to say probably those two are my favorites. On I-80, I spent a lot of time on I-80 and I quite liked it up there.
One from Raider69. I'm 48 years old and thinking about changing careers. I've been wanting to get into trucking for years now. Am I too old? And where do I start?
48 is absolutely not too old, no.
Raider69.
Raider 69, you need to figure out where you want to run, how long you want to be away from home, find a company that suits your needs in that regard, and go for it. I think you'll really enjoy it, frankly. Just, there are all sorts of trucking companies out there. There'll be one there to suit your tastes. Just go for it, and I think you'll love it. Do I think DOT officials are so hard to work with these days than they were back in the day? You know, that's a really good question. There are a lot more demands put on the DOT guys today than there were back 20, 30 years ago. Back 20, 30 years ago, for most cases, when you got pulled into the scale, the guy'd say, hey, you're a little heavy on the front end or something like that. Maybe, cut back on your fuel. They'd help you out for the most part. They'd give you pointers and wish you a safe day, and off you go. These days, a lot of DOT guys, depending on the state and the province, I know Ontario, for instance, has a quota system. So these guys are expected to write so many tickets to build up so much revenue every month. And I don't agree with that system, but that's what a lot of them are doing now. And whether they like it or not, sometimes they've just got to give you a ticket. As I say, I don't agree with it. So I'd have to say, though, that they're like anybody else. You get good guys and bad guys. I've met an awful lot of good DOT guys, and I've been lucky. I've met very few idiots. There are, sure, they're out there, but I've been pretty lucky. I find mostly if you treat them with respect, they'll treat you the same way. So,
Carlos?
yes.
How did you balance family while being on the road for long periods of time?
Good question, Carlos. I didn't do a very good job of that. I was gone for long stretches, and as a result, my family time suffered. I was lucky enough to marry a good woman who took care of the house and the kids and everything like that. But you know, when I look back years later, I know that I cheated my family for time. My kids both complained about it to me in later years. My wife certainly made a point of letting me know that it was time to get off the road. She'd had her fill, but I was just lucky. If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't run long haul over the road. I'd pick something closer to home. And right now I'm working where I get home every night. And I love it. I can't believe I did it so long and didn't get home every night. But I'm really enjoying this short stuff. I should have done it years ago. Do they make 18 geared trucks anymore? Sure. Sure they do. You can, if you're building a truck, you can order an 18 speed. They're one of the most popular transmissions for owner operators. They're excellent transmission.
What motor is your choice and why? How much miles per gallon is okay?
If Richard, I assume you're talking new trucks now, new truck engines. My preferred engine was always a 3406 Cat. And that's what my truck has, and I've had great luck with it. Cat no longer builds truck engines. If I were buying a new truck today, I would buy a PACCAR motor. They seem to be having the least amount of trouble with the PACCAR engines, and depending on what kind of freight and what terrain and that type of thing that you're running. But I think if you see a consistent 7 miles to the gallon or better, I think you're doing pretty well. But the new trucks certainly are much more aerodynamic than the old ones. How to adjust with night driving in 2 lanes? I'm not a big fan of night driving, frankly. If you've got to do it, you've just got to look as far. I used to aim my headlights a little bit higher than normal, so I could see as far ahead as I possibly could. And it takes a great deal of focus to drive well at night. I was always blessed with good night vision when I was younger, not so much as I got older, but you've just got to be careful and pay attention and look as far ahead as you possibly can. Aim your headlights up a little. I find that really helped me. Is Eaton Fuller transmission your favorite? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. You like the C15 Cat engines or the Cummins engines, Danny? Danny, I'll take Cat engines all day long. I've owned both, but I far prefer the Cat engine. How many days off will I get if I'm out for 4 or 5 weeks at a time? How do I tell the dispatcher if I'm getting married? Every company's different. It's hard to say how much in time, how much downtime, how much home time you'll get after being out that many weeks on the road. Certainly, I think if you put in 4 or 5 weeks on the road, you should be telling them when you're available again, not having them telling you that you'll be hitting the road after a reset. No, that many weeks out on the road, you deserve to pick your own time when you're ready to go, because you've been gone a long time. There's all sorts of things you haven't had a chance to take care of at home. So I would insist on telling the dispatcher when I was ready, not when he thinks I'm ready.
Paul, what's your favorite mega carrier?
My favorite mega carrier? Don't laugh at me now, but I consider Celadon a mega carrier, and I hear good things about Celadon. So I'd have to say that Celadon's probably my favorite mega carrier. I've talked to people in their office. They're polite. They're engaging. I'd have to say Celadon.
JCLS, what states should you avoid in the winter?
What states should you avoid in the winter? That's a good question. I never really thought much about it. I'm well used to winter driving, so none of that really bothered me. If you're not familiar with mountain driving, then certainly try to stay out of the mountains, like in the Nevada range at the California border and Oregon, places like that. But if you're comfortable with mountain driving, I really don't. Really don't have any problem with them. I used to have more trouble running across I-40 in Texas in a bad storm because they didn't have equipment for clearing the snow and sanding. I'd had more spinouts in Amarillo than I've ever had in Laredo. 389 or W900? Tough call again. Tough call again. They're both beautiful trucks. I'd have to price out both and see which one was better and who looked like the better dealership to deal with. That would boil down to a dealership problem for me, I think. Who was the better dealer in that case and who was the better salesman?
If I'm staying overnight in a city to pick up a load for a return trip home, do you think I should get paid for the overnight stay? Sinad.
Yeah, if you're camping overnight waiting for a reload, if they shut you down at 3 o'clock and you've got 5 hours left, yeah, I think they should be paying you for that. Now, I don't think you should get paid for your sleep time if you need your 10 hours off. No, I don't think you need to get paid for that. But the moment the 10 hours is up, absolutely, I think you should be on the clock. And I think you should be on the clock before you run out of hours the day before too. And another thing, if I was camping in a city waiting for a backhaul, I wouldn't camp in the city. I'd get outside of town where it's a little safer and find a truck stop to sleep in rather than sleeping in the inner city somewhere. Do I have any ideas which are the company sponsors for CDL in Canada? I really have to think about that. I don't right off the top of my head.
Well, if you don't know, we'll find out.
We'll find out though. That's a good question. I know Schneider's is here in Canada, and I know certainly they do that. Other than them, I'd be hard pressed.
Celadon?
And if that's true, yes, Celadon is here in Canada, and they certainly do as well. Certainly the big American carriers do. I'm not sure about the Canadian ones if they offer that at all. Never been interested in working for any of them. What's the best company to contract with? Depends on what you want to do. There's so many out there I couldn't recommend one. You need to find one that suits the type of trucking that you want to do. How can I build more tolerance to drive? Oh, that one got away from me. Sorry about that. I just got my CDL. Should I buy a Peterbilt and go owner operator? Absolutely not. Put in a whole bunch of time in the seat first as a company driver, Charlie. Being an owner operator is a huge step, and these days it's not always financially a good idea. So no, put in your time as a company driver. Find a good company, and you may find that you're better to stay a company driver for your entire career. The way the owner operator market's going these days, the freight rates are cheap, and companies want to keep their good guys. You may find you never want to be an owner operator.
If carriers offer their pay package, would it be fair to demand to be paid by the hour instead?
Would it be fair? As far as you're concerned, it would be fair. Would it be practical? They'll probably just ease you out the door. But certainly, the carrier has a responsibility to you to ensure that you're well paid. And if you find that you're not, it's time to find a new carrier. But so far, few of them, if any, are coming to the table for paying by the hour. If you want to be paid by the hour, get a local hauling job. Those guys pay by the hour, and I think they're one of the best bets these days.
Kenora, I can never use the splitter well going uphill. What should I be looking for?
The splitter that's not working for you going uphill. That's an interesting problem. I'd split the gear, hesitate, and then put on the fuel. Leave a second for the transmission to re-engage after you've split the gear. Give it a second to catch up to what you're thinking, and then put fuel to the pedal slowly again. I think you'll find the splitter will catch up if you give it a second. What kind of money does it take to start a single truck company? These days I'd want to have the truck, the trailer, the insurance, and 20 grand at least backup money in the bank before setting out, along with having my own customer. How much is enough money to start with leasing a truck onto a carrier? Again, I'd want to have $10,000 in the bank just to entertain that, and I'd want to make sure it was a damn reputable company, because a bad company can sink a lease operator faster than you can shake a stick at. You've got to be very careful if you're going to choose a carrier to lease on with. That's a make it or break it scenario. Be very careful who you lease on with. Ask around, talk to as many drivers as you possibly can.
Charlie, what do you think about tanker divisions?
Charlie, I really like tanker work. I find it paid better. Certainly you had to be on your game. You had to be careful. But I enjoyed tanker work. I've done all sorts of tanker work. I've hauled B trains full of gas and diesel, and I've hauled chemical tankers. I enjoyed it all, and the money was usually a little better. And I found the tankers very maneuverable as compared to freight boxes, for instance.
Redneck trucker, do you float gears?
Redneck trucker. I have to be honest. Yes, I do. I do a combination of floating and clutching it. My truck seems to like the feel of using the clutch between the high and the low range. So I generally clutch between high and low range and then float the rest of the gears. And I'm still on the original transmission in my truck, so I must be working out somewhat.
What kind of oil do you use?
I use 1540 Rotella oil. Always used it. This truck out here has almost 1.3 million miles on it, and it's never been taken apart. I've changed the injector cups and the turbo, but the motor's never been cracked into. It's the original motor. That oil has done me well. I change oil religiously at 12,000 miles, and I'm sure that helps too. But it's great oil.
What is your take on the 300-inch wheelbase, Charles?
You know, Charles, I like the 300-inch wheelbase, but you've got to be careful as to what kind of work you're doing with it, because you'll find it's tight to get into some spots if you're pulling a 53-foot van, for instance. If you're doing tanker work or something like that, or reefer work where generally you've got more room, love the 300-inch wheelbase. But it's a little bit long for dry van work or something like that. And depending, if you're doing intercity deliveries or something, you'll be cursing the 300-inch wheelbase then.
Scott, do you think Ontario is going to mandate DEF on trucks to operate here, like in California?
Ontario is fairly progressive that way. I expect that they will, frankly. Ontario has always had their head up their kilts a little bit when it came to trucking, so I expect you'll see that from Ontario, yes. That would be my guess.
What is the best speed of transmission and why?
The best speed of transmission? I'm not sure I understand the question.
18 speed, 12 speed?
If that's the question, which transmission do I prefer? I prefer the 18 speed. There are good transmissions out there. The 8 and the 10 are good. They're bulletproof, but I just like having the wider selection of gears.
If money wasn't an issue and you could order a new truck for yourself, what would you spec? Justin?
If I were buying my own new truck, I'd spec a 300 wheelbase, 389 glider kit. I'd take the motor that I have now. I'd have Cat rebuild it from stem to stern, and I'd put that in that truck, and that's what I'd run.
Charlie, have you driven in New York City?
Sorry, have I driven in New York City? Charlie, yes, I have. Did I like it? No, I didn't. But yes, I've been in there
Tell why you didn't like it.
a number of times. I found the traffic was ridiculous. I found the tolls outrageous. I found the condition of the roads, like the Cross Bronx Expressway, is horrendous. It's just a series of potholes. It's smoother to drive through the forest in my town than to drive in the Cross Bronx.
Dangerous?
Very dangerous. Yeah, and dangerous. If you break down, you need a gun if you're having to pull to the side of the highway because you're breaking down on the highway. And there's no shoulder half the places. Did not like New York City. Won't go back.
Uncle Buck, I am retired after 32 careers? What direction do you think the trucking industry is going in with so many DOT resections?
Uncle Buck, I think the trucking industry is going to have to bottom out before it starts to get better. I think it's well on its way to bottoming out. I think we'll see that within 10 years, and I think it'll have to turn around because the country needs trucks. So they've just got to treat their drivers better. The industry has to vastly improve. The infrastructure has to be fixed. There's an awful lot of correcting to be done, but I think, you know, they're forcing themselves into the ground. I don't think they're going to have a choice. I think within 10 years they're going to have to correct everything from the ground up, and I think that'll probably take a generation to fix everything they've broken. You're lucky to be getting out of it, Uncle Buck.
Question, what kind of bilateral fluid do you run in the jockey pump?
I don't even know what that question means. I don't know what a jockey pump is.
Have you ever driven in LA?
Have I driven in LA? Many, many, many times. And you know, I don't mind driving in LA. It's well laid out. The streets are wide. I find Los Angeles easy to get around. I quite enjoy Los Angeles as compared to San Francisco, for instance. If you're pedaling LTL in San Francisco, that's not nearly as much fun. But LA, no, greater LA, good system, good freeway system. Yep, no trouble running around in LA.
Thoughts on e-logs?
Sorry?
Thoughts on e-logs?
My thoughts on e-logs, you know, I came from a culture where we had to run our butts off to make money, and we all did. That was just how we did it. And when I finally leased on with a carrier, that was kind of a retirement program I thought I'd get into. Is I'd park my trailer, lease on to a company, pull their trailer, and just work occasionally. I had a chance to run electronic logs because that was a requirement for that company. And I expected to hate them, frankly. But you know what? I found once I got used to them that I like them. Now, when you're restricted to 11 hours running a day, you've got to be making pretty good money to make it worth your while if you're truly only running 11 hours as compared to when you're on the paper logs, you can kind of work a little longer and a little harder, so to say. But no, if I like the electronic logs, but if you're held fast to that 11-hour driving rule, you've got to be making good money per mile. And they've got to build some safeguards, or I'm not using the right word, but it's such a restrictive system that when you run out of hours on an electronic log system at a shipper or receiver, there should be some leeway built into that system so you can at least get out of the shipper's yard and to a truck stop without violating the hours of service. They're going to have to do something with that because or you get caught in traffic. It's just too restrictive a system right now. They need to fix it.
Really good question. This fellow's heard of truckers making close to 6 figures a year. Do you know anyone like this? And how long would it take to do this?
Well, when a trucker says he makes 6 figures a year, most owner-operators make 6 figures a year, but they're talking gross revenue. That's before their fuel, before their truck payment, before all their expenses. So it's nothing unusual for an owner-operator to make 6 figures a year. If he's making 6 figures a year net, now that's unusual, but very, very few guys do that anymore. 6 figures gross, that'll be what they're talking about, and that's not the same thing. You can make 6 figures gross and only net 30,000 a year as an owner-operator, and that's more typical.
What made you decide, hey, I love driving, I'm going to do what I love even though I have to sacrifice my home time? I'm in the same boat right now.
Good question. You know, I always loved driving. Even when I was a little kid, I drove boats, and whatever I could get my hands on, I loved to drive it. So I knew right from an early age that I really enjoyed driving. And I was always a bit of an insomniac. So I figured trucking was a perfect match for me because I could stay up for hours and hours at a time, really enjoyed driving. I never suffered from falling asleep at the wheel because I was such a light sleeper I couldn't possibly sleep when I was sitting up. I had to be horizontal to do that. So, and I always had wanderlust right from the time I was 10 or 11 years old. I just wanted to see the country. And I guess I kind of always knew. There were certainly some sacrifices to it. My wife allowed me to chase my dream when we were young, but yeah, it was a costly dream to have in the long run, but still, it was a job that I did for 40 years. I got get up the next morning and look forward to it every day of my life. And how many jobs can you say that about? I figure if you have to work for a living, and most people do, you should have a job that you enjoy. Ed, are you Canadian? Yes, I am, Ed.
I drive a UPS truck, but I want to start driving herds of cattle.
That's quite a change going from UPS to cattle hauling. Boy, that's night and day. You wanna put some thought into that. Cattle hauling, I've never done cattle hauling. I've known a lot of guys that have, and it's quite an adventure certainly, and it's hard, tough, dirty work. But it's a lifestyle. It'll certainly be different from UPS. You wanna think that one through pretty carefully. Maybe take a few runs with a cattle hauler or a bull rack that's running cross country and see how you like it. See if you can sleep in the truck at night when the cattle are rock and rolling in the back there.
I'm driving for over 15 years, safe driving. I stopped in 2010, being told now that as I was out of the game for over 5 years, the insurance companies say that I'm unhireable, or so I'm told. Have you heard the same? Yes, that is the case.
No kidding. That's crap, isn't it? When the insurance companies start dictating to the trucking companies, like I can understand a certain amount of that, but then to have them bracket everybody in the same shelf or something like that, everybody's a different individual. I think categorizing drivers like that by age is foolish.
No, not by age, but because he's been out of the industry for 5 years.
Okay, because he's been out of the industry? No, I just like riding a bike. Do you think you've forgotten how to do it? I know you haven't. I know I wouldn't have either, so no. But insurance companies live to come up with stupid rules.
What do you hate about Volvos?
What do I hate about Volvos? Honestly, I've never even driven a Volvo. So I tease guys with Volvos and about Volvos. I don't know as a truck particularly how they are. I think they're an ugly looking thing. They remind me of a Hoover vacuum cleaner, the way the nose drops and it sucks along the ground like that. I don't think they're a good looking truck, but I've had guys from Europe rate me and tell me what a great truck the Volvos are, that they're better in Sweden than they are in the US and Canada. But I truly don't hate them. I just wouldn't buy one. And I know they've got zero resale value. So as a guy that owns his own truck, resale value is important to me. So that eliminates Volvo for my picture right there.
Have you ever thought about an LTL driving job?
I've done LTL. I've done plenty of LTL driving. Didn't particularly care for it. Some of the best money I made was peddling LTL, certainly. If you put the right loads together, it can pay really well. But as a rule, I found I made better money just going back and forth with straight loads. Unless the LTL really paid well, I didn't find it worth my time.
Couple more minutes, couple more questions.
Couple more minutes and we'll wrap it up. Oh, that one went by too fast. What do I think of TMC Trucking in the flatbed division? You know, those guys have always been a classy operation. I don't know how well they're doing with their training programs. I understand they're doing their own training for guys now because of the driver shortage. Even high quality outfits like TMC are having trouble getting guys. But all I can speak to is the fact that they sure keep nice equipment. They sure have a lot of freight. They seem to move all the time when other guys are sitting. As far as I know, TMC is a class operation.
How do you feel about the Canadian 13-hour driving rules with no break?
I think the Canadian 13-hour driving rules are crap. I think they should do exactly what the US is doing. Here we've got two countries that trade back and forth more than any two others in the world. You'd think that Canada would be smart enough to mirror the US regulations so it would just make it simple for everybody. But Canada's always got to reinvent the wheel. The US has trucking down to a fine science. And I don't think that you know, the Canada inventing its own set of regulations is smart. We've got different weight regulations. They say the 13-hour rule, their defense for that here in Canada is that we've got great big expanses of country to have to travel across. I've traveled across to Vancouver and I've traveled across to Seattle and LA, and there isn't particularly any mileage difference. The US is just about big across as Canada is, so I don't buy that argument at all. I think the 13-hour rule is crap, and I think you should be able to make enough in 11 hours without having to run 13 to make the same money.
What are your thoughts on trucking in Toronto?
Trucking in Toronto has become a nightmare. I don't even take my car down there anymore. It's just a disaster. So no, I think trucking in Toronto, unless you're driving a company truck and you're getting paid huge money and you've got nerves of steel, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody.
What do you think of Western distribution out of Denver?
I don't hear anything good about those guys lately. They've been around for quite a while, but they seem to be having trouble getting good guys too. You know, they were a class act at one time. Certainly, really nice equipment. They have really good freight. They've got most of the freight out of Denver locked up going outbound, all the Coors beer and stuff like that. But I think even they're struggling in this driver shortage.
One last question. You ever truck into Alaska?
No, I never have trucked into Alaska. It's always been something I'd like to do, but not with my own truck, because I understand the highways are pretty damn rough up there, so I wouldn't want to brutalize my truck. But I would like to try it in somebody else's truck, certainly, but not in the wintertime.
Quick opinion on Prime? Last question. Last question.
Last question, my quick opinion on Prime. They've never had a good reputation from anything I've heard. I think the fellow that owns it is a rip-off artist, and I wouldn't go anywhere near them, but that's just my opinion.
Charles Young, thank him for the donation.
Charles, thank you for the donation. Appreciate that very much.
And wrap it up. Summary?
That's it for this evening. I've enjoyed chatting with you back and forth. I really like it. Let me know if you guys think this live video thing, your guys are getting benefit out of it. I know I enjoy it because it's nice to converse with other truck drivers, but I'm hoping you're getting some benefit from it as well. So please let me know one way or the other. I've enjoyed talking with you this evening. You guys take care, keep the rubber side down, and I will see you on the backhaul. Good night.